Dennis Rodman will be here in a moment, but we begin today with the escalating situation down at our southern border and the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy causing a firestorm, to put it mildly. At issue is the forced separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents who entered the United States illegally. NBC's Craig Melvin has more.
This morning, government processing centers like this one are overflowing with thousands of migrants, many fleeing gang violence in Central America. In newly released audio set to be recorded inside one of these facilities, you can hear the desperation of children separated from their parents. We talked with the attorney who released the tape, which NBC News could not independently verify.
The reaction has been more or less a primal scream from everyone that this cannot be happening, that this is terrible.
In April, the Trump administration started enforcing what it calls a zero-tolerance policy. Migrants crossing into the U.S. illegally, considered criminals, arrested and put into detention facilities, their children sent to separate facilities. Overnight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions defended the policy, arguing that it will act as a deterrent.
Hopefully people will get the message and come through the border at the port of entry and not break across the border unlawfully.
Sessions also trying to downplay comparisons to World War II concentration camps.
Well, it's a real exaggeration. Of course, in Nazi Germany, they were keeping the Jews from leaving the country.
Homeland Security admits nearly 2,000 children have been separated from their parents.
We are enforcing the laws as they exist on the books.
The secretary now on the defense.
What's happening at the border is being overrun by those who have no right to cross it.
The Democrats...
President Trump blaming Democrats in Congress, saying the situation could be fixed with a new immigration law.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility.
Those helping migrants say the policy will not stop those fleeing for their lives.
Punishing a 5-year-old by taking her mom away so that you can deter future asylum seekers is a human rights violation.
Again, to be clear here, Megan, there is no law that requires that children be separated from their parents. Nonetheless, word a short time ago that Texas Senator Republican Ted Cruz is going to be introducing legislation, perhaps as early as today, to try and fix this problem. Also, President Trump set to meet with congressional Republicans this afternoon. Meanwhile, it was revealed yesterday that roughly 2,000 children over the past few weeks have been separated from their parents here along the border. I'm in Brownsville, Texas.
2,000. What a number, Craig, and growing. Joining me now to discuss it, Daniel Goldman, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Amy Holmes, co-host of PBS's In Principle, and Megan Twohey is with us as well, New York Times investigative reporter and NBC News contributor. Welcome to you all.
Good morning.
So let's start with President Trump and what he said. This needs to be fixed with a law, Dan, fixed with a law. I mean, the law hasn't changed from GWB to President Obama to Donald Trump. The law is the same. Something has changed, which is Trump's zero-tolerance policy for anyone crossing into the United States illegally.
This is the biggest piece of misinformation about this entire thing. There does not need to be a congressional fix to this policy. What they did is they decided that we are, instead of what we've done in the past, which is to round up people crossing the border unlawfully, put them in immigration detention centers and deport them, we are instead going to prosecute them. When you prosecute someone, they go to jail. And because these people don't have status, they don't get bail. So jails do not have capacity.
Babysitting facilities.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you arrest someone, then they go to jail and their kids must be separated from them. That happens in every arrest across the country. Now, some arrests, we want that in our country. We want to arrest terrorists. We want to arrest, sex traffickers and
or somebody pulls a gun on a Border Patrol agent. You're going to jail, whether you have a child with you or not.
This is a balance that we've always struck in this country. And the difference now is these people are being prosecuted for a misdemeanor. They're likely not even going to serve a jail sentence. They're likely just to get convicted, sentenced to time served, and deported, the same thing that would have happened if they were just simply brought to the immigration
But
center.
possibly without their children, possibly having lost.
But the difference
children.
is they're separated from their children.
Yeah.
So it's the same net result, but the difference is that their children are separated from
Right,
them.
and so there's a question about whether, as a practical matter, the punishment is fitting the crime.
But this
right,
is a DOJ policy.
Can I just ask you? Let me ask you this. In the report, we said that most of these people are fleeing violence. We don't know that. We don't know that. The New York Times has pointed out in its reporting some of these folks are taking advantage of that as an excuse to just flee bad economic conditions, which is not something we grant asylum for. And there are some people who are using the optics of this by bringing children, hoping to minimize their detention time. So there are people exploiting what we're seeing at the southern border. That doesn't mean all of the people are exploiting the situation at the southern border. And I want to ask you, Amy, now you've got 4 former First Ladies speaking out about this. Laura Bush saying this policy is cruel, it's immoral, it breaks my heart. Rosalind Carter saying it's disgraceful, it's a shame to the United States. I understand, you've got Jeff Sessions out there saying, well, it's not as bad as Nazi Germany, because there they were keeping them in. It's always bad when you're having to, distance yourself from Nazi Germany.
The Nazi route. Okay, that's just rule number 1.
But
okay?
As an emotional matter, it seems like the president's critics are winning. They're winning.
Well, yes, and what we're seeing is bipartisan criticism of the way the policy is playing out. So, for example, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz, both Republican senators from Texas, are saying that this is not the result that we want in terms of separating children from their parents as these cases are being adjudicated. It seems to me an approach would be to keep families together while the immigration judge is deciding their status and whether or not their refugee status should be granted.
We haven't done that because President Trump doesn't plan for the implementation of these shoe-from-the-hip policies.
Right. And
we've seen it repeatedly.
And you brought this up yesterday. I thought it was a great point. My father is a retired customs inspector. And when President Trump was first elected and he put the temporary ban on those 6, at that time, 6 countries, the problem was that there were no resources and no training
so-called
for the
Muslim
people on
ban.
the front lines.
Yep.
So what we have is policy first, and then there's a sort of like backfill. And even Anthony Scaramucci, the mooch, remember the mooch?
Please, who cares what he thinks?
He's actually been critical
You don't
of
even
Donald
have
Trump.
to finish that sentence because literally no one cares what he thinks.
But he's been critical of his former boss.
Who cares? Honestly. My dog Basha has some feelings on it too. But Megan, you tell me, because you've got the political matter, and President Trump ran on this. I mean, I said this yesterday. He made very clear he wanted a zero-tolerance policy at the border. He wanted to crack down on illegal immigration. And some of his supporters are still with him. He still has some support, majority support within the Republican Party, but not within the country at large, according to the latest Quinnipiac poll. So does he have any wiggle room here?
Yeah, well, I think to go back to the question of, like, why don't they just keep families and their parents why don't they just keep these families together? I think we have to also acknowledge that this is a really complicated and messy situation, that you're not just dealing with the law, that you're also dealing with some court rulings that have said that you can't actually keep children detained, whether by themselves or with their parents.
For more than 20 days.
For more than 20 days. So
after 20 days, you've got to give them to social services, or you have to put them in foster care. The government is not allowed to hold them for more than 20 days.
Right. The Obama administration actually tried that and ran into this court ruling that said you can't do that. So
that's why some of the people are saying we need a congressional fix, which would make it, you could hold them longer. But is that really the solution?
Right.
Hold the kids longer as opposed to find a facility where they could all stay together.
His proposal would have a 14-day limit, that this needs to be decided by a judge in 14 days.
But asylum claims usually take years to decide.
That's why he's saying we need more resources, we need more judges, and we need to streamline this process.
I love that.
In other words, we should have planned before enacting the policy.
Well, and the other thing is, Dan, let's get real. How much is that going to cost? How much is that going to cost?
It costs money to enforce the law, and that's what we need to be doing.
Well, where is the planning for it? Where is the budget for it? Go ahead, Dan.
No, the problem is the first thing they need to do is stop prosecuting people. Make this an immigration issue with the Department of Homeland Security.
They would say they've already done that and it hasn't worked.
No, but they haven't, because all of these fixes relate just to the immigration immigration aspect of things. They don't relate to the criminal prosecution aspect.
Keep it out of the criminal court.
So keep it out of the criminal court.
But hold on.
Wait, go ahead, Megan.
I was going to say, like, listen. I mean, I think we do have to acknowledge it's complicated. That the politics and the legalities that surround all of what happens on the border is very complicated. What's not complicated is basically the sort of horrific cries of these children that we're hearing coming out of their detention. The images we're seeing of the children who are basically being breastfed by their mothers before they have to part with them. And I think that the real question moving forward is, are we going to be able to are we going to be able to use these very uncomplicated feelings of outrage? Are the politicians, are Trump and others going to be able to use that legitimate outrage and emerge from this with some real incentives to find some practical solutions?
I mean, the truth is, history would suggest no. It would. When is Congress, what's their track record in getting it right and coming up with great solutions to our most difficult problems quickly? I mean, I hate to be a cynic.
The only thing that gets done these days is when there's a deadline. And this, at a minimum, is creating some sort of an artificial deadline that something has to be done. So
I feel like you start with the cries of the children, which whether you are anti-illegal immigration, whatever you start with the cries of the children. You say, that's not us. That's not what we stand for here. And then you work together backward from that to stop it and find a solution that actually works. But it's going to take leadership.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.